are now listening to an inspirational message from the Greater Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, where Dr. Michael Wesley Sr. is pastor. Please join the service in progress.
And I won't put you in it. How often have you heard someone say 5, 6, 7, 11, 12, 15 years after the altar, look at the other person and say, "You're not the same person that I married. You're not the same one that I walked down the aisle with." In other words, it's almost implied, it's not stated, but it's almost implied, I never would have married somebody like you. In other words, what happened? What did you do? Why did you change so? I think the real truth is not so much that another person has actually changed. I think the real culprit, or the real understanding that we need this morning, is to understand that in courtship, opposites attract. And opposites attract. And listen, a fascination builds because you are attracted to someone who's totally different from who you are. And let me help you. You know what statistics say? Statistics say that even when a relationship dies, that given sufficient amount of time for healing to take place, 10, 15, 20 years even, that person will end up being attracted to the same type of person again. Oh yeah, it's the truth. If you don't think it's the truth, why you think sister girl keep marrying the same type? See, let me help you. I don't want to get into all of the temperamental differences, but because it'd be too complicated. But here is a highly relational person, extrovert, outgoing, feels no pain, meets no strangers. Does not usually find him or herself necessarily attracted to another person just like that. They usually will find the opposite type. Guys who are highly relational want a quiet girl. Girls who are usually highly relational, they want a quiet guy. He's so mysterious. He's deep. You know, I want somebody who's different from me, and we're fascinated by that. And sometimes people who are those calculated, thinking people but have no emotion. They are attracted to people who have deep-seated emotions and feelings, and they want somebody who have a heart since they don't have one. And they feel like we'll marry somebody with one heart and we'll share the one heart. I'm just telling you, people opposites attract, and what happens as the marriage go along, the fascination turns into frustration. Can I tell you? Can I be real? How real do you want me to be? Can I? Well, if I bleed, you gonna bleed. Well, I'll go ahead and bleed a little bit. In my own relationship, I was attracted to a girl who was different from me. And I was going, cue up, all of those stuff, man. Just the party, man, lead the party. Party over here, party over there. The roof is on fire. Oh yeah, man. That was me. And then I looked over there and saw the girl that was quiet. I thought. and reserved, and she was. And intellectual, and all of those kinds of things, and it fascinated me. But I got to be honest, in the first early years of our marriage, that fascination with some of those things that I thought initially attracted me began to be the source of my pain. Because that quietness, it just seemed like I almost had to draw out conversation. It didn't flow readily. And I started in my sinful self. You hear it? Think maybe I need somebody who can talk a little easier. Oh, y'all, you can pretend if you want to. And that sensitivity was very sensitive, very timid. I mean, real sensitive. We'd go to the movies and she'd cry in the movies. She would come apart if I treated her like one of the boys. I'm just talking like, I'm telling you now. I'm telling you. And over time in that first part of the relationship, those qualities that I had found to be attractive became offensive to me and became part of the making of what was a growing distance. Again, like I say, you can pretend if you want. And because of that growing fascination had turned into frustration, even I began to think, maybe I've married the wrong person. Anybody been there? Anybody know that the fascination, the things that you like, oh, he was tall, he was dark, he was handsome. He was so strong. He was the race driver type. He was always so adventuresome, always on the go. That stuff, that fascination will turn into frustration. And now a person who has married a person like that calls that stuff irresponsibility. Oh, you don't ever want to do anything on schedule. You want to make up everything. You don't ever want to be in place. You always want to be on the fly. And then people who are calculated and thinking, who have married someone else, looks at them and says, now you become a case for clinical evaluation. Something is wrong with you. And we come to the place of seeing that fascination turn into frustration. And when that happens, the extrovert says to the introvert, says, listen, come on, baby, I need a party. I need to go around people. And the introvert says, well, you just go on. Leave me alone. And the extrovert said, what's wrong with you? And then the extrovert comes back and says, all of you extroverts are the same, a mile wide and an inch deep. And then he shoots back, you're sick. I didn't know I was signing up for a duty with a hermit. Man, I'm just talking about what happens in the aftermath of. When you're in courtship, you're not looking at right things. You're not evaluating this stuff in that way. You're looking with Google eyes. And you're not thinking about temperament issues, and you're not thinking about temperament differences. And then when the real temperament began to manifest itself, you're thinking, maybe I married the wrong person. And I want to challenge you on that. Let me press you on that. Are you sure that you married the wrong person? May I ask you the question? Can you imagine what it would be like to live with a carbon copy of you? In my case, that would be stuff for a horror movie. Listen, I want to tell you. I want to tell you what the problem is when we think that we are the standard. When we think that our temperament is the only one that's right, we take out a hammer and a chisel, and we're trying to make that other person be who we are. I want to tell you something. It's enough for one of you to live in that house, and you don't need two of you. You've got to understand that you can't handle two of you in your house. Man, when I got married, I thought everything was fine, but then the sin in me. You know, I got a tendency, I can be honest with you, I'm not ashamed. Look now, Adam found out that he had some sin in him once he got on the other side of that garden. Eve found out she had some sin in her because now this stuff is in them. And it's in you. And it will come out. It will come out. I know you may be quiet. You may be just so cool and so easygoing. But to let somebody push that button and you turn into somebody different. He may be ever so nice, but you push that button in him, and he becomes a different person. And I just want to tell you, man, that you just got to stop trying to make each other into who you think. And we want to pound our people into replicas of us. So be careful there. If you're concerned, what you ought to be concerned about is celebrating each other's differences. Do you understand that God didn't make no junk? When God made you, when God made the other person, and even though opposites do attract, you know, that's what makes a team. You couldn't be a team if everybody did the same thing. If everybody played the same position. In football, if everybody was going to be the quarterback, who's going to block? And who's going to catch? And who's going to run? You don't need everybody to be the same. Learn to appreciate the uniqueness and the differences and celebrate those differences that are there. I say to you this morning that it's time to put down the hammer and the chisels and begin to move more into the realm of acceptance. But that's the third level of confusion that comes, and I really want to deal with this, although I know there's not as much time to talk about it, but there's the theological confusion on the perspective that perhaps I married the wrong person. And theologically, I've heard pastors, I've heard teachers, I've even read it in books by different other authors that have propagated that somewhere on planet Earth, God has prepared that special someone designed before the foundation of the world to be your lifetime mate. Have you ever heard that? It's called the one and only theory, that there is only one person on this planet just for you. Now, my friends, I have some problems with that. I really do, to think that out of almost the world's population now is almost 7 billion people. And to think that God may have chosen only one person in this whole wide world. I can't find that in this Bible. I don't know where people get that from, but it's not here. It's not certainly not in this Genesis account. Yes, Eve was the one that God created for Adam. But then, I'll talk about that in just a minute, but throughout the rest of the Bible, you don't find specific instruction that say God has made only one other person in this worldwide haystack And you got to go through the world searching for that one in this worldwide haystack. Can you see the kinds of problems that kind of theology can wreak havoc on marriages? Listen, single people then began to develop an enormous anxiety about trying to find that one and only person. And they set out to find him. And they go to malls. And they're looking. And they see one and say, is that him, God? Is that her? Not him, not her. And we're always looking for that one and only. And that can be devastating. I had a single person to come to me one day and say to me, say, well, Pastor, what if my one and only goes down in a plane crash? Then what? Do I look up for the backups for number 2, 3, 4, 5, 6? How do I know? Then I had another man tell me one time, he said, listen, he said, I know that I shouldn't marry this woman. He said, but she told me that God had told her that I was the one and only husband for her. And I don't want to go against God. He said, who am I to challenge God for what he has set up from the foundation of the world, even though I know we're going to have some problems? Can you see theologically what this one and only theory does? Let me take it to you in another way. Where it really gets dangerous is when a couple who's struggling to make their marriage go, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes on in the mind of one of them who has found a book that propagates this one and only theory. And he or she wakes up in the middle of the night and said, wake up, baby. Said, I've discovered what our problem is. Said, this marriage cannot work. This marriage will not work because you are not my one and only. And I'm not your one and only. So let's stop beating our heads against the wall and start searching park benches for our one and only. Can you see the devastation of that? No, that's not what God says. We've went through all of these other series and messages in the series. What God says, God does limit the field. He said, don't be unequally yoked. He says, get hooked up with another Christian. All right, now you narrowed the field from several billion now down to maybe a couple of 100,000. And from there, then it becomes a question. God has given you ability. You choose who you like. God will honor your choice. He will. You choose, you use discernment. Yes, you pray for guidance. Yes, you pray for understanding. Yes, you pray for discernment. And God says, listen, you don't have to worry about whether or not you married the wrong person. If you married at all, you married the one that I gave you, allowed you to be with. You chose him. And I'll give you a plan to help you make it work. And I'll give you strength to get through the difficulties. And I'll give you power to help you through the dog days. And I'll give you strength. If both of you would turn to me and look to me, you can make this thing work. I know that we would like to think that there's some mysterious person out there. It might be. But I tell you what, you can do yourself a whole lot of harm. Because I really think that the number one issue for men as it relates to why women feel that they have married the wrong person is that men forget that they still need to date after marriage. Because what it took to get them, it take that to keep them. And I think women forget that too. Woman went to this women's convention, and the women were all discussing. And one woman said, ladies, I came to this convention last year, and I left here so fired up. I went back home, and I told my husband, I said, baby, if you want to see this house clean, you're going to have to clean it up yourself. Boy, she said, and the first day, she said, I didn't see nothing. The second day, I didn't see nothing. And the third day, I came home, and the house was spick and span. And all of the ladies jumped up in a roaring applause. Another lady stood up and said, ladies, I came to this convention last year, and I left here so fired up, I went back home, and I told my husband, I said, baby, I said, listen, I ain't cooking no more. And if you want something to eat, you're going to have to cook yourself. And ladies, I want you to know the first day I didn't see nothing. And the second day I didn't see nothing. And I came home the third day and dinner was already done for me. And boy, they broke out in a round of applause. Another lady stood up and said, ladies, I came to this meeting last year. And I was so fired up about what I heard. I went back home. And I told my husband, I said, baby, I want you to know there'll be no more love making in this house. And she said, I want you to know, ladies, the first day I didn't see nothing. And the second day I didn't see nothing. And the third day I could see a little bit out this left eye right here. We have to understand that it's not, honestly, it's not that you have chosen wrongly or unwisely. Marriage is tough. The greatest challenge in my life has been to try to make a marriage work. It's taken everything inside of me. And it takes the grace of God and the power of God to make it go. There are some people who think that if they meet the one and only, then they won't have to work at any conflict resolution issues. They don't have to deal with any temperamental differences. They don't have to resort to understanding and compromises and none of those kinds of things like that, that they would just sail through life on seas of marriage bliss. I want to tell you, that's not the truth. If you're going to make marriage work, you're going to have to work at it, and you're going to have to pray. And if you're in the middle of a difficult circumstance right now, then maybe you need to go to your knees and ask God for mercy and for strength and for help. Stop looking at the other person and saying, if only you would do better. Turn the searchlight on yourself and make sure that you are doing all that you can do. And then pray that God will open the eyes and minds of that other person. You can't change another person, but God can. God knows how, man. I mean, he knows how. God, can I tell you, I'm done? But God knows how to get in people's dreams. He knows how to get in folks' minds. I mean, man, folk be going the wrong way, and then all of a sudden they, oh, skirt, let me go back. Because God knows how to do that. So put your trust in him. Trust and never doubt, and he will surely bring you out. Didn't we say that? Take your burdens to the Lord and do what? Leave them there. Leave them there. Leave them there. Leave them there. So I want to say to you this morning, if you're here and you've never trusted Christ as your Savior, that's going to be the first issue. If God hadn't worked on you, it's going to be hard for you as a sinful individual to be able to do anything long term with anybody else. Because you're going to approach the matter from the self-centeredness of your own sinful nature. And then whoever it is that you might hook up with is a sinner too. And unless both of you have found the saving love of Jesus, then it's going to be hard. It's going to be difficult, impossible almost. But with Christ, all things are possible. So why don't you make yourself a committee of one today and fix the problem. Fix you. Ask the Lord right where you sit to come into your heart, to forgive you of your sins, to help you become the man, the woman, the boy, the girl that he would have you be. And then know that that will mark the beginning of a journey of faith. And whatever happens in your life, you can always count on God. You can always call on him, and he'll come through for you. Whatever your need is today, we'll give you an opportunity to unite fellowship with this church if you believe God has brought you here today as we open the doors of the church. And anytime during the singing of the song, give God your heart, give one of these your hand, doors of the church open. If you think you've married the wrong person, think again. Go to the work. Hang in there. Next week we're going to deal with that. Staying in love. Dealing with the courtship that need to happen in the aftermath. And looking at where those relational breakdowns are and how they might be mended. So come back next time and we'll talk about that. Doors of the church open. While we sing, the door's open. You can come today by letter on your own Christian experience.
Hope you enjoyed the broadcast. You have been listening to a message from the Greater Shiloh Missionary Baptist Church, where we are reaching the world for Christ, located at 2135 Jefferson Avenue Southwest, Birmingham, Alabama 35211. For a copy of a CD or DVD, you can reach us at 205-925-5972 or visit us on the web at www.greatershallow.org. For an uplifting message, please join us for the next broadcast.